discussing Russia's advance and offensive ever since the capturing of Avdiivka, and according to how some people say, it has petered out. Well, first off, right off the bat, it has not petered out yet. It is still a full-on offensive. The Russians are just having some losses, as any military would, in doing this offensive. However, there are some issues the Russians are facing that can help the Ukrainians on the defending side. So the first and major issue, the main issue of this area and this battlefield, is that it does not favor the Russian military, and I'll show you just in a couple of seconds. So if the Ukrainians, let's say, want to get forces from A to B, they have Semenivka over here, they have Berdichi over here. Those are the places with their troops. They also have a town over here, a couple major villages and towns over here. However, this is the main line of contact. So the Ukrainians can send troops from Semenivka into this village, into that village, and into Berdichi to stop any Russian attacks. However, if the Russians want to send troops to attack, you have the Russians going through pretty much an open field, which usually leads to what people call in this war roads of death. And what you see is, if the Russians just put troops to go into here, that's a 5.3 kilometer journey for those tanks to go through. If the Russians put troops here, that's a 7.3 kilometer distance for those tanks, vehicles, soldiers to go through and to hope to survive. And it's just so easy for the Ukrainians to use their drones to destroy the Russian vehicles. The same thing was happening to the Ukrainians during their summer offensive of 2023, when they were trying to get to Verbove and even Robotine. There was this road, but it was so long, let me show you real quick, and long in this, well, probably, like, if it's a 3 kilometer road, you don't want to be using it. But the thing is, the Ukrainians were here, and obviously there were some trenches. That's why the Ukrainians captured places, but vehicles don't hide in trenches. So from this area where the vehicles were, and this is how we saw a bunch of Ukrainian vehicles being destroyed, abandoned, or just damaged, to Robotine, that's a 6 kilometer way to go. That's not going to be easy when drones are in the sky, artillery's everywhere, especially for the Ukrainians at the time, because the Russians did outnumber the Ukrainians in artillery at the ending of their summer counteroffensive. So that's the main problem for the Russians. As I'm going to pull up these videos real quick. This is a video on YouTube. Obviously, I'm going to censor it for YouTube. The Rumble, you can find it uncensored on my Rumble account. You can see that these Russian soldiers, about 30 of them, I would say, are getting shelled by cluster munitions, and a lot of them were KIA, a lot of them were probably likely wounded as well. So these Russians were just going to, and this is not a human meat attack, this is them going from Avdiivka to this town over here, but the Ukrainians spotted them, and the Ukrainians used that to bombard them with cluster rounds. As you can see from the geolocations, this thing all happened right around here in this forest patch here. So this is a pretty open area for the Ukrainians to strike. Also, you see Ukrainian drone attacks on Russian, not only Russian personnel, but Russian vehicles. As you can see from this footage, the Ukrainian drone is just hitting these Russian vehicles. You already see another destroyed Russian vehicle here. And this will likely lead to, and when the Russians, if the Russians continue the attack, which 9 times 10 they will, this will likely lead to a long highway of death, road of death, where a lot of vehicles are destroyed and abandoned. Lucky for the Russians, it will be destroyed and abandoned vehicles in their territory, in the occupied territory that Russia has, so Russia can always, just take them and make them reuse them after fixing them. However, drones love, and that's what we saw in the footage I just showed you guys, to come over to an abandoned vehicle and completely destroy it by usually going into the vehicle itself, if it's a kamikaze drone, and destroying it from the inside, or dropping a couple grenades in it. And that's not funny or fair for anybody. That nobody wants that, okay? So this is another thing of the Russians being destroyed. The Russians, there are 2 tanks destroyed here and another armor fighting vehicle right here, I believe. So this is just a bad situation for the Russians. What the Russians would want to do in order to stop this, they would want to take completely control of these areas over here, and I'll show you right here. And once they had complete control over this area, because drones do have a limit to how far they can go, and that's why you don't see a lot of Russian drone attacks in these deep Ukrainian areas. Ukraine can resupply their forces to a degree of safety that the Russians just don't get to experience when trying to resupply their forces straight out of Avdiivka. So the Russians would want to capture those areas over here and capture the full entire area of Berdichi over here. So Berdichi is very confusing. I want to show this video real quick. It was from, I believe, a couple days ago, but it was of a Russian attack, and this Russian attack ended poorly. However, you see this Russian attack, the Russian BTR, I believe it is, comes in and he lands the troops and he goes out of there. Everything's going as to plan, as normal. That's what you're supposed to do. And then a drone hits it, it gets caught on fire, and then you later see it completely destroyed. That is not fixable. You cannot fix that. And then you see a Bradley, U.S. supply Bradley to Ukraine, start firing and hammering these Russian soldiers. Unfortunately, one man actually was cut in half by this Bradley. And at the end of it, as you're seeing now, well, obviously not on YouTube, but the uncensored version is on Rumble, you are seeing the Russian soldiers, all of them are dead. And right over here, you will see Ukrainian forces right here, basically probably collecting the dead, getting their ammo and all that stuff. So back to everything that's happened today. So Berdichi, again, is very confusing. We got a geolocated footage of Russian drone strikes here, which people would say, oh, Ukraine has control of this area. But then we got in the same area, literally just a few meters apart, so 0.3 kilometers apart, we have the Ukrainians launching drone strikes. Okay, so Berdichi is in the fog of war right now, as much of these towns are, but that's what they would want to do. They would have to capture these towns, and then they would probably want to scare the Ukrainians of making the Ukrainians think they will be encircled by trying to attack this way, and the Ukrainians would likely withdraw. But that's one of the major reasons the Russian offensive may peter out very soon, at least in this area. We're not talking about over here or up here near Stepove, because again, the Russians all again pretty far out from Krasnogorivka, from Stepove, and you can't really put a lot in Stepove, especially since Stepove was completely destroyed and annihilated. But it is closer to Avdiivka than, let's say, these areas over here. So another thing that is stopping the Russian advance is these rivers and lakes. Water is never going to be good for any advancing or retreating army. Even if they can make it across, it's going to be terribly difficult. We saw how difficult it was for the Ukrainians to withdraw from Avdiivka. Although the 3rd Assault Brigade did end up saving the day for the 5,000 to 7,000 Ukrainian soldiers that could have been surrounded in Avdiivka, it would have been way harder and probably impossible if there was a river behind them or a lake behind them. And that's why some people say the Russians did not try to hold out in Kherson City and just took the L and withdrew, because you do not want to be facing the water in advancing or being pushed back, especially being pushed back. So those are also things that are confronting the Russians in this area. Now, I'm not saying obviously that the Russian offensive won't go anywhere beyond this. They can go very much beyond this if they just are willing to lose the vehicles, willing to lose the manpower, and willing to and able to break these Ukrainian strongholds, these Ukrainian fortifications. So if Russia can do that, then we could see obviously the Russian offensive go way further. However, right now it seems like the Russian offensive has kind of slowed down, and we'll see what tomorrow has to bring, because obviously the map could look totally different tomorrow. Ukraine is launching a couple of counterattacks in Berdichi, also this area over here, this village over here, and this village over here. And Ukraine is also, but Russia's also attacking as well. So it's really hit and miss. Now, before we end this video, just quick point I want to talk about just real quick, and this is Nova Mivkaivka. So this area is completely under Russian control, the area that's in red. As you can see, these Russian soldiers all putting up their flag. I don't know what particular unit that is for the Russian military, but they all putting up their flag. Now, if you see the Avdiivka putting up the flag and this village putting up the flag, there is a difference. And that difference is that the Russians recording, there's not a bunch of Russians here, there's only 2, and they pretty much stay, once they're done, they go back into the building. And the reason being is likely because the Ukrainians are very close by, and they do not want to be killed by Ukrainian snipers, or Ukrainian other men. So like soldiers, small on fire, artillery, FPV drones, stuff like that. And another M113 apparently already dragged away from the town was captured, and you can see that Russian MOD sticker on it. Bit of insult to injury there. And I just real quick, last but not least, two Russian offensives. This one is around Adrivka. Obviously did not go well. You see, I believe it's one destroyed tank and three destroyed either IVs, BTOs, or APCs. And you see about 12 Russian soldiers killed. So this attack obviously did not go well for the Russian forces trying to launch an offensive. Also, the Russian forces also tried to launch an offensive from this area over here. And this attack also did not go as well as the Russians planned. This attack over here, right here. And as you can see from, first off, the thumbnail of the video, there are dead Russian soldiers, but you can see that this is a column of Russian vehicles advancing. Does not go well. They either get mined, probably droned a bit, and the attack fails and the vehicles are ultimately destroyed. And as you can see, the vehicles are destroyed, and the Russian soldiers at the end, as you can see, these are just dead Russian soldiers, probably about 20, and some destroyed Russian tanks, destroyed Russian light vehicles and transport vehicles and stuff like that. So the Russians are launching an offensive all over the front line. Not all of them are successful, but some of them are. I'll keep you guys updated on the latest news